want to make sure we inform our friends and neighbors of the impacts these new policies may have on all of us who own private wells. Don Henry, the Agua Dulce Town Council Water Committee Chair, and Jacki Ayer, the Acton Town Council Utilities Chair, have put together some detailed background and requirements concerning private wells and their maintenance. Our topics of discussion tonight will be well yield requirements, well water treatment devices, and hauled water. After that, we'll hear from representatives from the Pacific Legal Foundation, the oldest and most successful public interest legal organization that litigates for property rights, limited government, free enterprise, and a balanced approach to environmental regulation in courts across the country, including the Supreme Court.
About what exactly are the regulations that apply to the county health department, the health officer, Dr. Fielding. The environmental health department's authority is not boundless. They actually have to work within the boundaries that are established by state law. This is my own opinion, but I think it's possible, and I think it's actually even plausible, that the Board of Supervisors was perhaps even unaware of the new chemical standard compliance requirements that were imposed by this ordinance. I don't get the impression that since it wasn't really enumerated anywhere in the package, that they might have not even have been aware of the impact of what the addition of those two words would be.
First slide is well yield test mechanics. I've labeled the bare property as green property. In other words, basically there's no house, no well, no storage tank, no septic system. And so we're going to call that green property. New well is the first portion here. And basically the procedure starts out where after the well's drilled, you chlorinate the well and install the well pump system with a sounder tube. And the sounder tube's installed so that you can measure where the water level's at while the test is being performed. Then you perform short 6 to 8 hour pre-test to determine the drawdown in the well and the GPM output. You collect a water sample and have the water analyzed for the most prominent problems, which in most areas is either arsenic, fluoride, or nitrates. Then you check the recovery of the well after the drawdown test is completed. You make a determination if the well has a high probability of passing the county yield requirements. If the results are positive, then the next thing is you make application for a well yield test. You schedule with the inspector for testing. Normally that takes a 1 to 5 week period. You pump the well for 24 hours prior to the test to lower the static water level in the well. Install the surface test equipment to monitor the flow rate and direct the water flow 50-foot distance from the well. Next thing is you meet the inspector and start the test, where you begin to monitor and record the flow rate every half hour for the first 4 hours, then hourly for the next 6 hours. Then we check the accuracy of the flow meter every 5 hours, monitor and record the drawdown of the well every 15 minutes for the first hour, and every hour for the next 9 hours. At the end of the 24-hour test period, we monitor and record the drawdown every half hour for the last hour. Then we meet the inspector again and record the final flow rate, accumulated meter reading to see how many gallons were pumped out, and gather water samples for quality testing by both us and the inspector. We monitor the recovery of the water level in the well every half hour for 1 hour. We meet the inspector again and determine if the well has recovered 90% of the total drawdown. To pass the test, it's required that where the water level drops to, let's say for example, you have a 100-foot of drawdown, the water starts out 100 feet from the surface and drops down to 200 feet. After a 24-hour period, the water level has to come up 90% of that 100-foot which it dropped, which means that the water level would have to come up to within 110 feet of the surface to pass the test. If it is not, then we get to monitor and record the number of days that it does take to achieve that 90% recovery and divide the flow rate by that number. For example, if it takes 2 days to recover, you can only claim half of the flow rate. 3 days, you get to claim a third. 4 days, a quarter, up to a maximum of 5 days, after which the well is considered a failed well. After the field test is complete, We wait for the quality results to return from the lab, assemble a well yield results packet, which looks something similar to this right here. Inside this, it contains the well driller's log, the copies of the permits, field data sheets, pump test results, pump design curve, lab results for water quality, well yield determination sheet, and a site map and other supporting documents. But we're going to, for tonight, for the purpose of this meeting, we're going to focus on a 400-foot well depth and an 800-foot well depth. But basically, to pass through the county only, as far as the new health department requirements, well pump and test, you're at $26,022 for a 400-footer, $47,000 for an 800-footer. If that arsenic comes up over 10 parts per billion, then that filter is going to cost you about $7,750 on average. And in a 5-year period, it's going to cost you about $76.50 to maintain that thing. So 400-foot well right now, you're looking at about $41,000. 800-footer, you're looking at about $63,000. You got one dry hole, and you got some nitrate in that water. You could be looking on a 400-footer, $85,672. An 800-footer, $107,272.
Well, right now, to get a 1 in a million cancer risk, the arsenic standard would have to be 0.02 parts per billion. A 2 part per billion standard, which is 5 times lower than what we're actually complying with, is only a 1 in 10,000 cancer risk. So the point is, and I sent this email to County Council, and I'm sure she sent something back. I didn't have a chance to look at my email before I left. But the point is that it's a myth that these standards are developed based on purely health standards.
Very quickly, after you spent your $107,000 that Don talked about, and you imbibed your 3 gallons per minute, you probably need a septic tank. If you look at the proposed septic tank regulations, those are $35,000 to $45,000 to retrofit. And if you use that at night, you probably need to worry about retrofitting your rural night skies, outside lighting, which is also around the corner. After you've done all of that, which is roughly $200,000 or so, you can worry about a house. Where is all this leading to? You know, Mark Twain said a long time ago that whiskey is for drinking in California, water is for fighting over. Property rights are fundamental rights. When you think about it, you don't think of property rights being the core right. But all I would suggest to you, after you think about it, you will find that all of the other rights, all your other freedoms are actually based, the center, the core value is still property rights.
But my goal here tonight is to give you a basic sense as to how you can defend yourself when government, in this case, a county government or an agency within county government, is enacting land use regulations or health and safety regulations that are obviously onerous and may be, depending upon the circumstances, illegal or unconstitutional. The Lucas test, it's basically what named after the case called Lucas, and the rule is basically, if the government regulates your property to the extent that you can't do anything on it, then that's called a total or a categorical taking, and the government then has to compensate you for the fair value of what it's taken. If, however, the government regulates your property, but to the extent that, only 60% or 70% of the value of the property is taken, then it becomes a much more difficult analysis, and then the courts look at a variety of factors to determine whether or not the landowner has to shoulder that burden or whether the government has to pay for the value that is that level of water quality so far beyond what any reasonable person would say would be required to serve the county's purposes of making sure that people who live on the property have safe and plentiful water, whether that goes so far beyond that level that basically what the county is doing is using the permitting process to say you can't build at all.
Count on.
Like school.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.